Hey guys, Zazubaar here, and today I'm here to do what I imagine won't be a very long review because I don't really have a ton to say on this. Um, and I've talked about this in the past and kind of given my opinions on it, but I'll talk about it again and talk about it specifically because I do think it's worth talking about. Um, so Godzilla is getting a little hotter now than he's been over the past couple months because of all the stuff that's been going on at Comic Con and what's been revealed about the Legendary Pictures movie with all these rumors swirling about what monsters are going to be in the movie, what the plot of the movie is going to be, what the tone's going to be. All this wonderful, wonderful stuff has been swirling around the internet, and I did a video on it. I did another video on it with all my good friends over at Santa Sarazawa with the World War G3 chat, which I'll put a link for in the description. I highly recommend you check it out. It's fucking fantastic. I think it's so entertaining. I think it's really funny. I think it's really insightful. I think it's fantastic. So go check it out in the description. Um, but yeah, Godzilla's becoming very hot again, and you know, people have asked me over the ensuing year after I did my Godzilla Palooza if Godzilla's the main thing you're known for talking about, and you just reviewed every single one of his film appearances. So haven't you kind of killed the golden goose, so to speak? And not that Godzilla is my only golden goose. I mean, I'm doing a whole month on another fictional character I love coming in a couple weeks. So it's not like I'm Zazubar's dead if I've talked about everything that has to do with Godzilla, which I haven't. There's a ton of shit that I own that I haven't even touched on in my videos, and maybe I'll talk about them at some point. And let's be honest, not everything Godzilla's been in is worth talking about because some of it's either really generic or fucking awful. And I'm not talking about films, I'm talking about out-of-film appearances, like some of the books and some of the video games, and we might talk about them at some point, but they're just not really meaty enough to talk about like the films are. And I've talked about a certain medium in which Godzilla has found some success quite a bit in other videos. I've talked about, and then of course other medium will be comic books, and I've talked about a load of Godzilla comics in videos before. I did a video on the Dark Horse series, which I failed to do a part two, because there's two Godzilla graphic novels I'm familiar with by Dark Horse Comics. There's Age of Monsters, which I did review, and then there's Past, Present, Future, which I do own, and I've read part of it, but it's really bad. It sucks. And I got about halfway through it, and I just stopped, because it sucks. It's really, really bad. So right now I'm going to say, don't fucking read it, and don't spend money on it, because it sucks. It's not half as good as Age of Monsters. But there's another Godzilla comic book series which I've touched on in the past, but I've never actually reviewed. I think that it's extremely worth reviewing, and we're going to get into it today. We're going to talk about the Marvel, I'm going to call it a mini-series, or a maxi-series, or a limited series, if you will, because it only went on for 24 issues. The Marvel comic book series, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, which it shares the same title with the Dark Horse series, but Marvel's run started in 1978 and then went for in 77, excuse me, and then went for 2 years to 1979 because there are 24 issues of the comic book. The book was written by Doug Mensch, Herb Trimpe, Jim Mooney, Tom Sutton, and friends. And I'm reading from the cover of the Essential Godzilla book I got at my local comic book shop. Now, if you're not familiar with Marvel, Marvel Comics does this, and if you don't know Marvel Comics, get out from under your rock. So I won't even attempt to explain that. But Marvel does this really awesome thing that I always thought was really, really cool, called Essential. They don't do this anymore. They did this for years, and I when I was a kid, I tried to get as many as I could because they're fucking spectacular. Where they print the first, like, almost full, almost like the... what's the best way to describe it? So, okay, here's how I'll describe it. They print like the first 17 issues of Ghost Rider, which I do have as well. And I've talked about that, I think, in videos before. And then they put that in a book because it's kind of like the first leg of what Ghost Rider was when it started. And then they did the same thing for Spider-Man. They did it for Daredevil. They did it for Hulk. The one they did for Hulk was not very good. I have a certain Hulk book that I like to turn back to get the old stuff, which is the Marvel Visionaries, not Marvel Visionaries, Marvel Masterworks Hulk stuff, because it's in color and it's gorgeous Jack Kirby art and other artists, so I prefer that. But I'm rambling. But the Essential Godzilla, it's the first all 24 issues of Godzilla King of the Monsters, written by all the writers that it's mentioned. I'm not going to dig into all the writers because we'd be here longer than we'd have to. And I'm not even going to go into the full story because it jumps all over the place. Let's just put it that way. But that's essentially what this is. It's the only 24 issues of Marvel's Godzilla series, and the story behind this book, based on what I know of Godzilla history, which, come on, it's fairly expensive. I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I know quite a bit of Godzilla history. Of course, the official Showa Godzilla series, the first official Godzilla series that ran from 1954 to 1975, ended in 1975. And the reason for that was financial problems. Now, Godzilla was not unpopular by any means. He was still fucking popular as shit, especially in Japan. And even in America, Godzilla had built up a large American following based on television appearances, but also drive-in movie theater appearances, just like a lot of other Toho properties had done as well, like War of the Gargantuas became really big over here. Strangely, probably the most popular Godzilla movie over here in the States was Godzilla vs. Megalon, which, if you know me, not a fan. And Godzilla had the Godzilla character and the Godzilla trope had kind of become known based on that film. So, in the 70s, American companies, there's a lot of Godzilla stuff that came out in America, specifically for America, in the mid to late 70s. And this is one of them. And along with this, you had the very infamous Hanna-Barbera Godzilla cartoon, which I do want to review at some point as well, because boy, is that an experience. You had, of course, the Shogun Warriors Godzilla toy, which really doesn't look that much like Godzilla. Not gonna lie, I had it when I was a kid. It didn't really look like Godzilla. Yeah, coloring books. You had a model set, which I owned as well. I don't have it anymore, obviously, because it broke. And you had a slew of other Godzilla memorabilia that came out in the late 70s, and this was a product of that. And you know, it's nice to know that someone was trying to keep the character alive back then, because Terror of Mechagodzilla, while it's a great Godzilla movie, was kind of disheartening because circumstances did not allow it to do well at the box office. And that was for a variety of reasons, one of which was the fact of the oil crisis that was going on in Japan. Strange marketing in America, just the slew of things affected that film's marketing. And it's a shame because that's Ishiro Honda's last Godzilla movie, a really good Godzilla movie. And it's just a shame it didn't do very well. So this was a product of the franchise not having any new films being produced just for financial reasons. So with all the rambling aside, let's dive in. So here's the story based on Godzilla King of the Monsters in this book. The continuity is really confusing. Let's just start there. It's very clear that this doesn't take place in the same universe as the Showa Godzilla series. The book tries to trick you into thinking that it does by basically saying, A, that there was an original 1956 Godzilla attack, which, if you want to attack the book for that, I don't think it's fair, because the only Godzilla Americans saw, you know, the only original Godzilla people saw was Godzilla King of the Monsters in America. So, you know, they're trying to dupe you into thinking that that was the first Godzilla movie, which it's really not. First Godzilla movie was 54. So the book, it runs with that. It's all 1956 is when he attacked and all that. And it runs with that. And it starts there. It shows, they do these little artist renderings of stuff that vaguely looks like the original Godzilla. And then, they do stuff that vaguely looks like classic Godzilla fights, because they have to explain some kind of precedent for Godzilla, which I do like. They do say that this is not the first time he's appeared. Far from it. There's experts who devoted their lives to him. But apparently he hasn't shown up for a while. And what happened was, something happened, he got in a fight or whatever, and he got frozen, kind of like in Godzilla Raids Again, that built into King Kong vs. Godzilla, where he got frozen in an iceberg, the iceberg melted, and he ended up he ended up on the Canadian coastline and then worked his way down to the States. The whole basic idea is Godzilla attacks the United States, and then the ensuing series from start to finish is Godzilla moving across the United States. And you've got Shield, and if you've seen the Avengers, you know what Shield is, which it's essentially the Marvel Universe's big government military installation who deals with these supernatural threats, and Godzilla's kind of a supernatural threat. And the whole series is them coming up with different ways to stop Godzilla because, he fucking destroys shit. And they don't hold back on the fact that Godzilla has dabbled into both the realms of villainy and heroism, which I do like. You see, the one thing that this book gets right that you wouldn't think it would is that it honors every aspect of the legacy of Godzilla, which is spectacular. He's not a hero, he's not a villain, he's just Godzilla. He just does whatever the fuck he wants. And they honor the legacy. He attacks cities, he causes destruction, he's a metaphor for the atomic bomb, and he fights giant monsters. This book honors that, and it's very, very good to see that it does. And that's the really big, surprising thing about the series I did not expect. It is surprisingly faithful to the legacy of Godzilla. The art itself is fairly good. It's very 70s Marvel. I'm not sure who did the art. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know who did the art. It kind of goes all over the place. Godzilla's design is fine. It looks a lot like the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. And I think that's where they were taking their inspiration from, because it's 70s comics were aimed more at kids, and if you have a Godzilla title, people who watch that cartoon are most likely going to flock to it. So I think they were, at least design-wise, trying to attract an audience who would know that Godzilla, and they would associate that Godzilla with this book and then buy it. Because comics have always had a very hard time selling, so you do need to kind of cop out in some ways in order to get people to read the book, and that was something they did. And even then, it looks like Godzilla. It's not Zilla by any means, but it's a little bit of a funky Godzilla design. It's a little bit cartoony. The eyes are weird. He doesn't have pupils. They're very, very they're black eyes with a little fireball in the middle, which is cool, but it's a little weird. And it gives Godzilla this very inhuman quality. Now, he's not human, but one of the things I always liked about Godzilla was the fact that he had vaguely human-looking eyes, and that was always kind of a creepy, almost, metaphor for, hey, motherfuckers, you created me, and then destroying you. I always liked that. And it's something that I hope they continue with the new series. Now, of course, they've done Godzilla in film, and it's worked without, human-looking eyes. I love GMK's eyes. They're fucking blank white. This doesn't have the same effect. Now, there are random panels, especially in the first issue, where Godzilla does have actual eyes, like vaguely human-looking eyes, and it looks great. And I think the best art is in that first issue, because there's this great scene where Godzilla attacks an oil refinery, and the art is gorgeous. It's just him smashing through this oil refinery and blowing it up. It's really well done. I think that the art gets progressively less oriented on Godzilla and more prototypical Marvel art, which is fine. I love Marvel art, but Godzilla's design suffers as the book continues, if you know what I mean. He starts out looking like classic Godzilla, and it gets more and more Hanna-Barbera, more and more less Godzilla. The one thing that gets more and more like less Godzilla, I suppose is what I should be saying, is the tongue. Godzilla's tongue barely gets seen in the films, and in this book, he's flashing it like a lizard. He doesn't have a forked tongue. He's not flicking it out like a lizard does. But whenever he opens his mouth, it's like separate from the bottom of his jaw, and it's like flailing it looks weird. It doesn't quite work right. But those are all nitpicks. It looks like Godzilla. The art's gorgeous. It works for 70s Marvel. And it's very, very cool. This book is very, very entertaining. Let me just say that. It's a very, very entertaining read. If you like Godzilla, if you like science fiction, I think it's especially classic Marvel science fiction. It's a really, really good read. If you like the Fantastic Four, like early Fantastic Four, you're gonna like this book. Well, A, the Fantastic Four is in it. And B, it has that same tone. It's very much so out there science fiction played totally straight, which is what, later Showa Godzilla is anyway, so it works in that way. And it's continuing in that vein of, oh, Godzilla's destroying a city, a giant monster shows up, they fight, Godzilla fights S.H.I.E.L.D., and then he moves on to the next city. It's very much the formula. Little hairs are thrown in here and there with the humans. The humans are quite likable. They're not totally fleshed out. They're all very much so archetypes, but they're fun archetypes. And their archetypes aren't ones that have been beaten over the head in comics before. They're archetypical science fiction characters, so they do work. You see them on Star Trek. You see them in Showa Godzilla. You see them in all these science fiction properties. They're archetypes, but they're not they're not bland. They're just not fascinating characters. They're likable to follow enough. They don't really get much character development, but it's there. But I mean, it's so surreal to me to see Godzilla put into the Marvel universe. That's the other thing that makes this a really fun read. Aside from the fact that it's very, very classic Showa Godzilla stories. If you like the later Showa series, you'll like this a lot. But aside from that, it's really, really surreal and awesome to see Godzilla thrown into the Marvel universe like this, because it's never been done before. Godzilla's never been inserted into another fictional universe, and to see it happen is really, really cool. Examples. Nick Fury fights Godzilla in the first issue with his helicarrier. Fuck, that is awesome. Then he sends in another dude to take on Godzilla named Dum Dum Dugan, which is a weird name. He's kind of played like an idiot, and of course that's why the name's there. It's not really funny. It's just a little weird. Agent Gabriel Jackson is his name. I'm gonna say Gabriel Jackson, and I think that's wrong, but whatever. The dude who's in the 90s Hulk cartoon is in this book, and he's likable because he kind of goes through a character arc. It's a little bit sappy, but whatever. It works for the book. It works for science fiction drama, in that he starts out as just kind of a soldier taking orders to kill Godzilla. And then he develops into someone who respects the fact that Godzilla has no malice towards anybody. He's just doing this because that's all he knows how to do. He's a fish out of water in every sense. And that's really the core of Godzilla's character in this book. He's very much so a fish out of water. He's played a lot like Kong. It's not fantastic. It's not how I like Godzilla written, but for a 70s comic sci-fi version of Godzilla, it works. The other thing that's a little bit strange to have to put into a Godzilla story is a kid who connects to Godzilla, and he can like control him, kind of like Andaro can King Kong. It's done because children became very present in the Godzilla series in the 70s, and also because of Gamera. It's stupid. It makes no sense. We have no idea what this kid's connection to Godzilla is. We know his grandfather's connection to Godzilla. His grandfather was on a boat when the nuclear test that created Godzilla went off. And they're all Japanese, by the way, which is something I like. A lot of Japanese characters in the book. The roots of Godzilla are in Japan, which I do like. And he was there when Godzilla was born, so he feels this responsibility to Godzilla to protect him, because he feels that Godzilla is a victim, which I do really, really like. Just not a fan of the kid. The kid's fucking annoying. He's constantly running around being like, no, don't kill Godzilla. I'm like, kid, Godzilla's killing people. We got no choice here. I love Godzilla too, but he's fucking killing people. Let's just face facts here. But that's the emphasis on his character in this book, is that he's a fish out of water, not so much a walking reminder that we fucked up. I mean, that's there, that's talked about, but the core of Godzilla's character is not that revenge-seeking monstrosity that was in the Heisei series. And to be fair, it hadn't really been done in the Godzilla series since the original, so it's not fair, I think, to criticize the book for taking a characterization for Godzilla that wasn't made popular until the next decade, or even 2 decades later, if you consider the fact that the Heisei series didn't really become popular till the 90s. Anyway, I'm rambling. So yeah, it's if you like Dark Godzilla and that's all you like, you're not gonna like this book. Let me just say that. If you appreciate the campy Godzilla, you will enjoy this. But I've been seeing a lot, and this is why I'm doing this now, because I saw a piece of fan art that really wanted me to go back and read this book, because I find it really entertaining, and this is not a criticism of the people who do this. I just think it's funny that so many people want Godzilla to fight the Avengers in a movie, yet they did it in the comics. People either don't know or they don't remember the fact that this book has Godzilla fight the main Avengers cast. I think the only ones that aren't there are the Hulk. I don't think Captain America's there, and that's really it. All the other Avengers are there that are in, and Hawkeye and Black Widow aren't there. But Thor's there, Cap's there. No, I'm sorry. Thor's there, Iron Man's there, Vision's there, Wasp is there. The mainstays of of classic Avengers, not the film Avengers, are in there. The only one that didn't get to fight Godzilla, didn't get to fight Godzilla in this book that would have been fun is the Hulk. Godzilla and the Hulk share so many characteristics. I think that they two really had a really big missed opportunity to not have the Hulk fight Godzilla. He's mentioned there a couple of times. The one that I like the most is just because of when this book was published. It was published in this particular issue was published in this is the issue where the Fantastic Four fight Godzilla. And Godzilla's going through this weird shrinking phase. What they do, one of the things they attempt to stop him is they have Hank Pym create this ray that's going to shrink Godzilla down to a small size temporarily so they can capture him. And then they're gonna do something, and they come up with something later on. They want to send him back in time later on, but we'll get to that. He designs it, and it works at first, but again, it's temporary. It only works for a little bit. He gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And he gets to the point of being kind of like, essentially the size of how the Hulk is done in the comics now, about that size, about, I don't know, 12, 15 feet tall. And he fights the Thing from the Fantastic Four, and they're fighting in a museum, and the Thing has this line where he says, I hate Godzilla because he's keeping me away from watching my favorite show about the Hulk, my big green pal. The Thing and the Hulk have this weird friend-enemy dynamic in the comics where they have this almost like gentlemanly disagreement about who's the strongest one in the Marvel Universe. Now, my money's on the Hulk, but, whatever, we'll rest our case. The thing, that's a cool reference to the fact of the Hulk had a live-action TV series the same year that issue got produced that became really, really extremely popular, which is cool. Now, I don't know if the show exists in the Marvel Universe and is a fictionalized version of the Hulk. I don't know what the story of that is, but it's unusual. But it's a nice reference. I love the 70s and 80s Hulk TV show. But I digress. What else do I want to touch on? The monsters Godzilla does. There are like 5 or 6 issues in this series where Godzilla fights other giant monsters. Yeah, they're generic as fuck. They're not in the same league as monsters he's fought before. And I'm not talking about strength-wise, I'm talking about design-wise. They look like monsters that someone had to come up with quick to give Godzilla a reason to fight something. I don't even fucking remember their names. They're so generic. Most of them are aliens. The one that's not that I can think of is kind of cool because it has a parallel to Godzilla's origin. So we got this Yeti. Or Sasquatch, given his location, in the Rocky Mountains that gets dislodged from there's a Yeti frozen in the ice under a mountain, basically. An atomic test goes off, wakes it up, grows it Godzilla size, and Godzilla fights it. And it's a cool fight, but that's really the only monster that even kind of stands in the same league as Godzilla. Everything else is very much so just like, Godzilla can kill this in 5 seconds, and he does. But there are alien races in it. Everything that makes the later show a series of Godzilla like entertaining as fuck is in this book. Aliens, crazy scientists, other giant monsters, other mutations, military fights with Godzilla, crazy out there sci-fi plots of Godzilla traveling back in time to the age of the dinosaurs and fighting Devil Dinosaur, which was a comic of the time, which never gets referenced anymore. Godzilla fights Devil Dinosaur, teams up with Devil Dinosaur. They fight other dinosaurs. There's this great bit I love because it's a really cool thing for a Godzilla fan. I do like the idea of Godzilla going back to his own time, to the age of the dinosaurs. It's something that's been done better in the Dark Horse series, but I like it here too. I do like the one in the Dark Horse series better though, because they put a focus on the fact that it fucks with his head. This book does it fine. They don't really make a big deal out of the fact that it fucks with his head. They make a big deal of the fact that Godzilla knows something familiar. He's home, and he decides he likes it. I do like that. But Godzilla is still shrunken down. He's not his full size yet. He's growing. He's the size of a normal dinosaur now. Normal T-Rex, let's say. He's about, how big is a T-Rex? 25 feet, 27 feet? Someone in the comments is screaming, "No, you idiot! Fucking 20, whatever." I'm going to say 27 feet. Godzilla's about that size at this point, and he teams up with Devil Dinosaur. They defeat the villains of the day, and there's this great bit where they're like having this buddy-buddy moment, and Godzilla starts growing and growing and growing back to his normal 200-foot self, and he looks down at Devil Dinosaur and is just like, well, this is awkward. And then he gets sent back to his own time, you know, the present day, and then he fights the Avengers, and he fights S.H.I.E.L.D. again, and he attacks New York City. So that's really the gist of the book, and this went on for way longer than I expected. I apologize. Every time I say I'm going to make a quick video, it ends up being a half hour. But I'll just say this one last thing. Basically, the overall gist of the book is Godzilla going from coast to coast and wrecking the United States. It's great fun. I highly recommend it for classic Godzilla fans, for classic Marvel fans. It's just an amazing piece of history. And it's really depressing that we'll never get to see Godzilla fight the Hulk. Because there's so many moments in this book where he fights other Marvel characters. There's this great bit where Spider-Man takes a picture of Godzilla for the Daily Bugle. There's this amazing bit where J. Jonah Jameson is screaming at Robbie Robertson in the Daily Bugle office building about Peter Parker not getting any pictures of Godzilla attacking the city. Godzilla walks by the Daily Bugle building, stares at J. Jonah Jameson. J. Jonah Jameson starts yelling at Godzilla, and then Godzilla roars in his face and blows him back in the building. And then Godzilla walks away. It's this great bit. And then Spider-Man takes a picture of him. Now, Spider-Man wouldn't stand a chance against Godzilla, but, it's cool. And then the Avengers fight him. It's a great bit. I really enjoy it. Again, the only thing I wish is that the Hulk would have been able to fight Godzilla, because that's a fight I want to see. But again, it's entertaining. You can probably get it $20. Is it worth $20? Yeah, it's worth $20. I mean, you're getting 24 issues of a comic book that's very entertaining. Don't go into it expecting The Dark Knight Returns, because it's not The Dark Knight Returns. Don't go into it expecting Watchmen. Don't go into it expecting, Batman Long Halloween or Peter David's Hulk run. It's not that at all. It's just good old fun. It's just fun. It's classic Marvel. It's classic Godzilla. It's just classic. It's an amazing piece of history. It's highly entertaining. It's a little boring at points, but I think it's worth getting through those boring points to get to the really epic points and really entertaining points. There's some great dialogue. Again, it's almost just worth reading for the surrealness of seeing Reed Richards talk about Godzilla. It's just that kind of surreal that it's worth paying $20 to see it. I really wish Marvel would turn this entire run into an animated film. That would just be amazing. But they couldn't do it because they essentially for one, IDW has the Godzilla rights in the comics. Warner Brothers has the Godzilla rights on film. I don't even know if there are existing animation Godzilla rights. Who knows? So it just wouldn't happen. But that's going to be about it. Score? I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. Again, it's not great, but it's worth reading. It's entertaining. Highly recommend it. Get this anywhere, basically. I mean, any bookstore will either be able to order it for you. If you go to your local comic shop, they'll probably have it. most comic book stores I've been to that have the whole Marvel Essential catalog, they do have this as well. But don't take that as a definite thing. If they don't have it, ask up front. See what they say. But it's fairly easy to find. It's fairly common. I don't know what the story is with them reprinting it, but it's fairly easy to find, and you can get it on Amazon for probably cheaper than $20. So yeah, that's gonna about do it for this review. Thank you very much for watching. And look out in the coming days for the promotional video for my upcoming review series that I hope you all join me for. If you followed me for Godzilla Palooza, hopefully you'll follow me in another epic journey through an epic film franchise when we dig into Bondapalooza. So join me on August 5th for the start of that series, and sooner than that for the build-up to it. So thank you very much for watching. I'm Zazubaar, and sayonara.